Delver of Secrets is a tremendously iconic card. It's a 1 mana 3/2 flyer if you build your deck correctly. It was originally printed in Innistrad and is actually a reference to the movie The Fly, and back then MTG just made references, without having to license the actual IP. Delver found its home mostly in Legacy due to cards like Brainstorm, Ponder, and Daze working so well with the card. And Legacy Delver has become one of the most defining and iconic Legacy decks of all time. It's also the poster child for the Tempo archetype. Tempo is a slightly fuzzy word in Magic and can be tricky to define, but it usually refers to the pace of a game. Like the musical term, tempo is the speed at which the music plays. A tempo deck is oftentimes a mix of aggro and control. The idea is you stick a low to the ground threat like Delver of Secrets or Dragon Rage Channeler, and then use cheap interaction and cantrips to keep the pace of the game in your favor. And you kind of keep this train of 1-for-1 interaction going as your one drop that you played closes out the game for you. It's really about riding your early game threat to victory by disrupting everything your opponent does after you've landed that threat. There's a lot more that can be said about tempo, but I'm going to leave my oversimplification of it at that. In Commander, sometimes players like to take ideas or decks from 60-card formats and port them over to EDH. And I want to talk about doing that with Legacy Delver. But before that, I want to tell you about today's sponsor, Voidmonster. This is an apparel site started by Forrest ML, former MTG artist, most known for drawing that weirdly sexy version of Loot in that 133 Elk video.
Amazing.
No, this is just the way I see Loot.
They make great playmats and t-shirts with cool TCG-inspired designs. I really love my new Dark Ritual playmat, it's so sweet. The latest drop is bringing back all remaining stock from this year's past items. So if you missed out on those pre-orders, now is the time to pick one up. And by the time this video is up, many of those items are already going to be sold out. You can still get the 5-headed dragon playmat and the 5 colors playmats and the collectible cards, but you gotta act fast because those will be gone soon as well. Also, free shipping on all US orders over $100 through November 30th. Click the link below if you want to pick up anything they got here before they're sold out. Thanks to Voidmonster for sponsoring the video. So how do we do tempo in EDH? Well, it's pretty tricky to do. If you are the threat at the table from turn 1, then pressure from 3 opponents is going to be very difficult to beat, especially if you want to 1-for-1 players in the same way you would in Legacy. But I do think you can construct a Delver-esque deck that has similar play patterns and a similar feel. Let's start with the Delver, your threat. Now, playing a 1-mana creature and riding it all the way to victory in EDH is quite difficult. Delver is a very above-rate threat for 1v1 20-life formats, but in Commander, we don't really have an equivalent 1-drop. Serra Ascendant is a pretty close comparison, or maybe an infect creature, but since it's Commander and we don't need to be quite as fast, we can move away from 1-drops. And instead of focusing on the most mana-efficient threat, in EDH, we want our Delver to have scaling or resiliency. A scaling Delver would either get bigger or give you more resources over time. This helps you keep the aggressive portion of the tempo going. Cards like Alexios, Mana Gorger Hydra, or Talrand Sky Summoner all scale up how much damage you have on board. Alternatively, you can have a resilient Delver. The Titans with Escape can bring themselves back to the field repeatedly, or simply playing a creature with Indestructible can let you cast a Wrath and just keep attacking. Plus, it limits the amount of interaction your opponents have in total that can actually stop your threat. Reanimation spells also can work as your Delver. By self-milling and having a bunch of dangerous creatures in your yard, all of your reanimation spells become low mana value threats, because it's 1 or 2 mana for this big, powerful creature, allowing you to cast your cheap threat and then hold up interaction very easily. Additionally, your Delver can be your commander. Your commander inherently has built-in resilience, since you can just recast it from the command zone if they spend spot removal on your commander. This also gives your Delver list the most consistency because, well, your commander is the most consistent thing in the game. But your Delver is only half of the formula. If we want to have this tempo-y play pattern of attacking and dodging removal, then you're going to need protection. This is where the colors of your tempo deck are really important. You want to be able to protect your threat when needed so you can keep up the pressure. And luckily, every color has some way to do this, although some more than others. Blue has counterspells, which are obviously the best forms of protection, because you can also use them offensively to stop your opponent's win cons. Red has redirection spells, which are really great against spot removal because they become 2-for-1s, although red is not as good at protecting against board wipes. White has many options to give your creature protection or indestructible. Green also has a reasonable number of ways to give hexproof or indestructible as well. And black is able to gift undying or persist to creatures. Also, there are multiple colorless ways to protect your threats, usually with equipment. All of this is to say you can pull off this tempo deck in any color combination. But I think blue, white, and green have the best options for protection. So what does one of these Delver decks actually look like? Well, before I tell you that, if you like my content, consider subscribing and checking out the Patreon for Discord access and more. A Delver deck and commander would be very light on threats in the 99, and instead prioritize a few key important finishers, ideally in the command zone. Your 99 would have a lot of cheap ways to protect those threats, alongside some recursion and amplifiers to help close out the game. The goal is to put pressure with your threat, your Delver, and then play low mana value cards that protect it to continue to put more pressure on your opponents. That's the tempo. You're attacking, and when your opponent wants to take tempo back and stop the pressure, you avoid that with your defensive interaction and maintain tempo because you're controlling the pace of the game. You continue to attack, you dodge the removal, comes back to you, you attack again, you dodge the next piece of removal, so on and so forth. You want to make sure you have ample card draw to keep up with this, especially because you have 3 opponents throwing their removal at you. And you want to make sure you still have enough damage. Although this is not an aggro deck, you don't want the game to go super late because eventually you're going to run out of protection spells for your low number of threats. I think my Unspeakable deck is my best example of lists I currently play, which follow this play pattern. The deck is fairly threat light. Ishai in the command zone can close out games, and my polymorph target is the Unspeakable, which I also use to finish off my opponents. This card can help me loop removal, letting me maintain pressure, and attacking by removing blockers over and over again. And I have ways to recur the Unspeakable, making it resilient to removal. If you're looking to make a deck like this, Ishai is honestly a really great place to start. This is a powerful threat from the command zone, and with Partner, you can easily splash any other colors you want. Plus, with blue and white, you already have some of the best protection options in the format. Talrand is another commander you could build as a tempo deck. It might look similar to a normal Talrand control list, but maybe you want to add more cantrips and defensive counterspells to just power out more Drakes and pressure your opponents a little faster than a normal control Talrand list might. Holden and Paco are also great options. Paco can put on pressure early game, and late game, Holden can help you pivot to a more controlling, grindy style with all that value, which works well in EDH. Hashaton Scarab's First could be a neat option for tempo lists. You can use this ability to cheat out powerful 4/4s with dangerous effects and protect them while you put on the pressure. Or any reanimator list. When you're reanimating stuff like Consecrated Sphinx, Shieldred, the Whispering One, or Lumra, Bellow of the Woods, these are threats that scale or draw cards or just put out a reasonable amount of damage that if you're able to dodge some removal here and there and protect them or recur them, you can ride these to victory. Maybe all 3 of these would be great Delvers in your Sultai Reanimator list. Moving on to closing out the game. Are you actually going to win with your Delver? Well, maybe. That's kind of up to you. Your Delver can be a value piece which you use to get ahead in the early game and maybe run players out of resources, and then you can instead pivot to a backup win condition. So your Delver comes out early, it draws you some cards, you protect it, maybe you get a couple players low, and then you use some sort of combo finisher or a big late game X spell type finisher, something like that to actually literally close out the game. If you're playing a bunch of scaling delvers or resilient ones, or if it's your commander and you have access to commander damage, then you could actually win with your delver. Ishai for sure can close out games, especially when paired with Jessica. So can Alexios, even if he isn't your commander, just in the 99 as one of your delvers, Alexios and Slicer can put out a lot of damage. And if you protect them and have them dodge the 1 or 2 pieces of spot removal, they can close out games plenty fast. If you really want to win with your Delver, with your tempo scaling creature, I think you totally can. Just make sure that they scale in damage so you actually have a late game threat. Now, how strong is a strategy like this? Well, in casual EDH, I think that depends heavily on the quality of threats and protection. A lot of times, these decks come down to being able to untap with their threat so they can protect it. So, the more free and low mana value interaction you have, the easier it is to hold up that 1 or 0 mana to actually get to that untapped with your threat board state. So, if you have less efficient protection, then your deck is more vulnerable, or the value of the threats will heavily affect power level. If your Delver is reanimating a Jin-Kataxis Core Augur early game, that is a really powerful thing to do when you compare it to any threat that just does damage, because it gains you resources and denies it from your opponents. If your Delver is a resource denial card or massively resource gaining card, it's going to be a lot stronger than just raw damage. Keeping those sliding scales in mind, it does mean you can make a Delver style deck for brackets 2, 3, and 4 pretty easily, which is great. You have a lot of options for how you want to build a deck like this. Now, can you build a tempo Delver deck in EDH on a budget? Yes, 100%. A lot of these low mana value but not free protection spells are very cheap. For the most part, the 0 mana ones are the best, and those are expensive. But if you play a lot of the 1 mana ones, they're usually very affordable, especially a lot of the cheap blue counterspells, because there's so many of them. And there's a wide range of colors or commanders you can use, so it's easy to find a deck in any color combination that fits within your budget. Now, what kind of person should play a Delver deck like this? Well, this type of deck that has a low number of threats but puts on pressure early game can draw a bit of hate from the table. If you have this big scaling threat and it's already dodged 1 piece of spot removal, it's going to make your opponent sweat a little bit and can have them focus you a tad. Now, this can be mitigated by sandbagging your threats when needed or politics, but if you're the type of person who wants to just fly under the radar and not really get focused down, never be the threat, especially not early game, then maybe this type of deck isn't quite for you. Just keep that in mind. So, can you exactly port over Delver to EDH? Not quite. No 60 card deck is ever going to perfectly port over to EDH. And if you think I'm wrong about that, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear what deck you think ports over perfectly. But I do think we can capture some of the feel of a Delver deck by building around a low number of efficient scaling threats. I do get a Delver-esque feeling when I use Disrupting Shawl to stop removal targeting my Unspeakable, then hit them with the Unspeakable and get the Shawl back. You get those tempo swings and value plays, which have similarities to those 60 card decks in Legacy or Pauper, and that can be a lot of fun. I think this is a really interesting style of deck to try and build around and focus with, so give it a look. By the way, if you go on EDH Rec and you look up the tempo archetype, the way they calculate that is it's just people labeling their deck as tempo on other websites. As far as I know, that's kind of how they grabs those. So there's not like a set number of things that trigger it to be tempo. So you can see what other people consider tempo decks, which is interesting, but just keep that in mind. It's just whatever people labeled it. Anyway, thanks for watching, and special thanks to my tier 3 patrons whose names you see here. If you want to be in the credits or get access to the Discord like I mentioned, check out the link below.